so hot, everyone, and yes, I'm actually fanning with a rhubarb leaf, okay? So I was actually doing a little bit of cooking, and of course I was making rhubarb stuff, like rhubarb pie and all that stuff. And so what do we do with the extra little bit of rhubarb leaves? Well, the rhubarb leaves are actually poisonous, and so don't ever eat them. They are good for weed control, but there's something else you can actually do with it. Ah, it's so hot out. Ah, this leaf is perfect. Now, what I'm going to show you here is a concrete leaf. Now, you can't fan with this, but you can use this for many things. For example, you can actually use it as a bird bath, stepping stone, a decoration in the garden, or even a waterfall feature, and that's what I'm actually planning to make. So, I'm going to show you the step-by-step instructions on how to do this. It is actually pretty easy, so enjoy the video. Alright, the step-by-step instructions, everyone, is going to be pretty basic. You just need a rhubarb leaf, you need a little bit of chicken wire, or whatever kind of wire, a pile of dirt, really good strong concrete. Now the concrete is the most important thing. You want something that is very, very high in Portland cement. Nothing, don't use mortar mix, don't use anything with gravel in it. Should be a sand and concrete mix, very high. And you want something very, very strong. So ask your builder store and see if they can actually find a good mix for you. Okay, so all you need to do is get some basic garden dirt, doesn't really matter, any type of dirt. And what we're going to do is we're going to mound it into a little bit like a bowl of some sort. And the reason for this is going to give that nice depth that you're looking for to develop that bird bath or that waterfall feature. And you can actually develop it as high, mount it as high as you want. Very, very simple. And all we're going to do is just kind of do this a little bit. Get your rhubarb leaf next. We're going to set it down. Look at it, and first of all, if it's going to be a little bit square, you want to actually straighten it out a little bit and spread out the dirt and maybe add a little bit more over here, and just sort of fix it up to the point and just sort of imagine what it's going to look like the other way up. Okay? If you actually have some rips in the leaf, like big rips, you can actually get some tape, good Scotch tape, and just actually tape the leaf on the other side, okay? In this case, I have a little bit of a rip, but I'm not going to worry about it too much because this actually should be just fine. Okay, so I have my concrete mix actually in my bucket here, and this is not going to be everything here. I'm going to be constantly mixing up concrete throughout the time. I only use a little bit at a time because it's easier to mix. As you can see, I have my gloves on. Very, very important you put your gloves on. I have a little bit of a watering can here. If you never mixed concrete before, it's actually really quite simple. Just have the patience, but you really have to mix it. Pretend it's like actually making a cake, and that's exactly what you want to do. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little water here, and just get my hands in here, and just start mixing. Okay, as you can see, I have a consistency that can actually form a good lump here. It's not runny, and it's not too thick or dry. Now, what I've actually did throughout this whole time is actually got this little thing here, and it actually helps sort of get down right to the bottom in the corners and just sort of scrape around. So the consistency is very, very important because you certainly do not want it to be runny, and which will go all over the leaf, or too dry, and which would actually end up cracking. So this is a good consistency right here, and we're just going to let it settle just for maybe a minute or so before we actually put it on the leaf. Alright, now since this has actually settled just for a little bit, I'm just going to dump the whole thing right on here, as you can see what I just did there. And now I'm just going to spread it out just really nicely, and we want it to be at least an inch thick for this first layer, and this is the most important layer here. So, and we're just going to keep on spreading it right to the edges. As you can see, I'm going to probably need a little bit more concrete, and that's fine. All I have to do is just continue to mix more concrete and continue to add, and that is totally okay. So I'm going to make a little bit more concrete just to actually fill in this little area here, and then I'll explain the rest. All right, once we got the first layer down, what we're actually going to do is we're going to add the chicken wire. And this is actually important because it actually reinforces the concrete. And especially when you're actually getting these big size pieces, you really want to make sure it doesn't chip or break, especially during the winter or just maybe just weather. And so I'm slightly just bending it to fix the shape. And the most important, of course, to begin is usually the middle. And I have some extra little pieces here just to give it a little bit of support on the edges. Now, don't put this down too deep. You don't want it to actually go through the concrete. So just a little bit on the surface. Now we're going to add the second layer of concrete over top of this. Oops, shit.
That's staying in there.
This is the way Diva Dan does it. I just dumped a bucket of concrete that I've just mixed, and I'm just currently just going over it, pushing in nicely so it actually has good contact with the previous layer. And altogether, you want this to be at least about 2 inches thick. Now, since we actually have the second layer over top of the chicken wire, what we're going to do is just smooth it out a little bit as much as possible. And don't be afraid to actually add more concrete if you need to, just to give it that thickness it's going to do well. At the base here, I like to lower it just a little bit to make sure that it's good and tight. Once you've actually finished this, all you have to do is just let it sit and cure for at least about 2 days. You don't want to move it, you don't want to touch it or anything like that. If it's going to rain, cover it with a little bit of plastic, but usually after the first 12 hours it's okay. So if it's going to rain in about 12 hours later, that's okay. Concrete actually, the moisture escapes from it, from the sand, and that's what makes it hard. So the most important thing is to make sure that it dries properly. So give it some time. Once in a while, mist it if you need to, if it's drying a little too quickly. But other than that, you just wait for about 2 or 3 days. All right, after we have actually let the concrete cure for a couple of days, and it's very important that we actually do that, and partly because you don't want to do it too early, or otherwise it will crack, and you really want to make sure that as much moisture as comes out of that concrete as much as possible. So, here we go. In this case, it's pretty much dry. It's rock hard almost, and I'm just going to grab it from tip to tip, flip her over, and as you can see, the concrete leaf is right there. Now, what comes to this part is we are going to now just sort of peel off the leaf. And this has been sitting here, and I probably could just actually just wash this off, and we're going to, and this takes a while, so you're going to have to peel it off a little bit, and this is kind of gets to the tedious part. Sometimes you might want to get a little scraper of some sort or chisel, and you're eventually going to have to get into the veins and all that stuff. So we've just flipped it over.